For close to 2 decades now, GC as a generation has been famously stereotyped as the stall generation, with Restock being very powerful and Pokemon having maxed out bulk due to how GC DBs work. It is no wonder why people can think that defensive teams and PB stalling is all GC is. In the last 2 or 3 years, this stereotype has been mostly disappeared, as people who actually play GC spread the fact that GCOU is in fact very offensive. It is an outdated view these days, and anyone who says it is immediately called out for not understanding GC. Now, stall is still good in GCOU, obviously, but it definitely isn't all stall anymore. The same applies to UU too, which is largely offense based, what with stall being good. When we get to NU though, things are different. Offensive teams are the entire metagame, and stall is not just mediocre, it's straight up horrible. Now, stall was literally the entire metagame during the Raichu metagames, but those metagames are very thankfully in the past. In the Mr. Mime metagame, stall was generally not used, since the tier was about as offensive as the modern metagame. So why exactly is stall bad? Well, simply put, GCNU just doesn't have the Pokemon to make stall effective. With no broken Raichu and broken water types around, the remaining defensive Pokemon just can't replicate how stall once was. The tier is lacking in good defensive Pokemon, and all the good ones still let in important Pokemon. Common stall members include Azumarill, who is able to counter fire types and check Dugtrio, as well as setting up Light Screen, Ninetales to check Xatu, Magnemite and Gloom, Gloom to check Primeape, Hidden Power Electric, Octillery and Chinchou, allowing to provide Paralysis, Panko for Spikes Pressure, and things like Kingler and Lickitung to act as a bulky setup sweeper when provided with Paralysis. All these Pokemon are good, but they have their own issues that are hard to prepare for. Azumarill, for example, is just a sitting duck that lets in Pokemon like Statler and Kingler. Other stall Pokemon, such as Gloom, can be similarly passive, so preparing for the setup sweepers of the tour is very hard to do. There is one solution to these setup sweepers, however, and that Pokemon is Shuckle. Shuckle is the one thing keeping stall somewhat viable in GCNU. Shuckle hard counters Pokemon like Kingler, Statler and Weezing, while also just being hard to KO. The list of Pokemon who can reliably break through Shuckle is admittedly very limited, but Shuckle has its own crippling issues. For one, it deals no damage outside of Toxic, and most teams have multiple Restock users to make this a non-issue. Shuckle is also easily broken through by the tier's water types, like Octillery, Dugong and Chinchou. More importantly, though, Shuckle is completely free entry when sleeping for Dugtrio, who can then Screech lower Shuckle's defenses and then cause havoc for the stall team after that. Screech Dugtrio invalidates most stall teams on its own. Dugtrio is a top 5 Pokemon in usage in GCNU, and having no plan against it is just asking to lose. To deal with common setup sweepers, though, you have to use Shuckle, so it's just a lose-lose scenario. There are also some things that just own any stall team regardless, like Primeape and pretty much any Baton Pass team. GCNU is also lacking in good uses of Rapid Spin, with the best one being the flawed Graveler, and the tier doesn't have a single heal bell user aside from the largely unviable Snubbull. Most of the time, stall teams are used. They are just on the back foot the entire game against an offensive team. With the slow and especially frail Graveler, it can be hard to actually pull a Rapid Spin off, so stall teams are often playing with spikes on their field. The smart user of an offensive team can generally just keep double stitching with their offensive Pokemon to eventually overpower the stall team. This is compounded by how passive most of the stall team's members tend to be. The lack of heal bell also means that paralyzing stuff for a bulky setup sweeper like Lickitung tends to be hard to pull off. All of that is pretty much GCNU stall summed up. It just doesn't have the tools to be good. Compared to stall and UU, which has ways to deal with the broken setup Pokemon. If you want to be Granbull, go use Shuckle. Want to be Scyther? Go with Crobat. Blastoise in UU is actually a good, consistent spinner as well, unlike Graveler in NU. Now, stall is not amazing in UU, but it's certainly miles better than it is in NU. The defensive Pokemon let in powerful setup sweepers, but unlike in OU and UU, NU setup sweepers are very limited in reliable counters, particularly Statler, Primeape, Kingler, Wigglytuff and Weezing. Shuckle wild sees 3 and more, but then Shuckle just gets taken advantage of by Dugtrio, who then wreaks havoc on the rest of the team. Stall is just too inconsistent, too fishy, and just bad in GCNU. If you want to be successful on this tour, just load up Xatu plus Dugtrio spikes. Not this fucking stall bullshit with Shuckle. Like, don't use it, okay? That's my last thing. Don't use it, alright? This wasn't scripted, but I'm just saying, just don't use it. It fucking sucks. It's bad. It's poop.